In this Sekiro Shadows Die Twice guide, we're going to be taking an in-depth look at the Loaded Umbrella prosthetic tool. This is the second of 10 such guides exploring every facet of these, from explaining just what each upgrade does to how they can best be utilized in combat. I decided to do the Loaded Umbrella next because it is one I had a vague understanding of, and I really wanted to learn more about how it works in Sekiro. The Loaded Umbrella can be obtained near the old Grave Sculptor's idol in Ashina Castle. From there, drop down over the cliff onto the building with a hole in the roof below. There you will find Black Hat Badger, who will sell you this umbrella. If you somehow missed him, you can check back in this location later in the game, and you will find it lying where he should have been. The Loaded Umbrella, much like other prosthetic tools, is used very situationally. Pressing R2 will deflect incoming melee attacks if timed properly, costing 1 Spirit Emblem. If R2 is then held, you will block attacks with no further Spirit Emblem cost until you let go of R2. Unlike later upgrades, this version of the umbrella has the downside of not being able to deflect multiple attacks in a row easily, since L1 does not spin the umbrella. The primary use for this version of the umbrella will be to block incoming ranged attacks unless you possess the Projected Force skill. This skill will allow you to unleash a devastating crossing slash attack after deflecting or blocking with the umbrella by pressing R1. This attack is slower than a normal R1 attack, but hits much harder and has poise. This almost guarantees your hit to connect, even if struck by the enemy during its animation. Once you have Projected Force, if you deflect or block enough projectiles, usually 3 with the umbrella, it will begin to smoke. Once this occurs, you can use Projected Force to shoot your own projectile back at an enemy, dealing substantial damage. What's particularly great about this attack is that you can release R2 once it's begun smoking, continue fighting, and then shoot the projectile later if you wish. Please note, however, that if you swap prosthetic tools, your umbrella will quit smoking. This iteration of the Loaded Umbrella functions in a similar manner to the previous one, but pressing L1 while holding R2 will cause the umbrella to spin. Any attack connecting with the umbrella during its spin will be deflected perfectly. Since this spin lasts much longer than your typical deflect with Kusabi Maru, it's great against enemies who attack rapidly like the Long-Armed Giraffe or Long Shadow Long Swordsman. However, it can be used effectively against any enemy that deals physical damage if timed properly, and works well in tight spaces where movement is limited. The next upgrade is Phoenix's Lilac Umbrella, which works the same way as the Magnet version, except that it protects against physical and terror-based attacks. This makes it particularly effective against enemies like the Shichiman Warrior, Headless, and Headless Guardian Ape. However, that is not the only difference. Using Projected Force with this umbrella variant will add the effect of Divine Confetti to the cross-slash attack, but not the projectile. This does increase damage against all enemies, but particularly apparition-type enemies like the ones mentioned. This means you can face them without having to farm confetti if you'd rather not be bothered. Additionally, this attack will deal vitality damage through a deflect or block. The final upgrade for the Loaded Umbrella protects against physical and fire damage attacks and works identically to the previous upgrade otherwise. This makes it particularly useful against Blazing Bull, Ishin Ashina, and Demon of Hatred. Note that it cannot set the burning status ailment even when used in conjunction with oil. Final tips. If you're going to be using the umbrella regularly, I strongly suggest using Ungo Sugar for less incoming damage while performing Projected Force. It has a very long animation and is hard to time perfectly over and over again during fights with aggressive bosses. This will ensure you survive these mistakes and live to deathblow the enemy. Using Projected Force with either Phoenix's Lilac Umbrella or Suzaku's Lotus Umbrella will overwrite weapon buffs. These include Divine Confetti, Living Force, and Bestowal Ninjutsu. If you're going to be using one of these umbrellas, be sure not to waste these. All projectiles fired from the various umbrellas do the same amount of damage, and the only difference in damage is with the melee attack Projected Force. Phoenix's Lilac Umbrella and Suzaku's Lotus Umbrella deal roughly twice as much damage as the default and Magnet, so you're likely to be using one of these around endgame or in NG+. And since you cannot set burning, it won't matter which you use until you face apparitions or enemies who deal fire damage. Lastly, the Loaded Umbrella can deflect and block thrusting perilous attacks. This allows you to turtle a bit with this prosthetic tool, particularly against enemies who have no sweeping perilous attacks. The umbrella cannot deflect or block sweeping perilous attacks, so you'll have to anticipate these or simply not use the umbrella against enemies who do. Stay tuned for more prosthetic tool guides and be sure to check out our boss and beginner guides if you need more help with the game.